Hey, folks, we are live, and we're live in the pre-show. I was in a conversation in the chat room, and I almost missed it. So I hope everybody's doing okay tonight. Good to see you. I'm a few seconds late, a little late over on the Patreon as well. So everybody, welcome to the program. Accidental. It wasn't supposed to go public, but since it did, here we are. It was meant to be. What have I got in my pocket? Oh, I have a Tootsie Pop. I got that free today. So it's in my pocket. So welcome to the program. As you know, every show, we've got the 3-minute pre-show that's warming us up to the 9:03 start time over on Odyssey Radio, Subspace Odyssey Radio, to be factual. And I'm glad everybody's coming in tonight. This is fantastic. It's good to see you. Do the licks test. Yeah, I should. I'll only make it to 2. 1. Do you remember that? When I was a kid, anyway. 1, 2, 3. 3 is all it takes to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop. So, I don't know how old it is. We were at Walmart picking up some groceries, and there was a big bucket at the checkout, the self-checkout, full of candy like this. And it was like, take one. So I grabbed one. If there had been more than one, I'd have taken more. There was only one Tootsie Pop. All right, guys, we got a few seconds and we got to go live. As is the norm, we're going to go dark for a few seconds, about 10 seconds, and then we'll come back live. So everybody, you sit tight. We'll be back at 9:03 sharp. Stand by.
The Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Happy Friday evening. You know, Fridays, I'm thinking about Fridays because it's Friday. And Friday nights have this special energy that seems to be felt by almost everyone and everybody around you. As the work week comes to a close, people tend to look forward to the weekend, and Friday nights often seem to hold a special place in people's hearts. Think back just a little bit to Friday nights down through the years. What did Friday night mean to you? And usually we do Fridays are ghost days here on the Intrepid radio program. But tonight, we're not going ghosty. We might hit it a little bit. We're going to talk about Friday and just being Friday. And since I've got you all here and everybody's gathering for the live show tonight, come on over and take a look. By the way, I don't know how you got the link. If you're here, the link is there. I'm glad you're here. It's a good thing. Spread the word that we're live over on YouTube. I didn't mean for us to go live on YouTube, but there we are. And my glitch is hopefully your enjoyment. And so everybody, come on in, join the crowd. Let's talk a little bit. It's good to have you here over in the chat room. You know, Patreon, it's new enough for me that we haven't built up a huge audience yet. But you know what? If and sometimes it feels like it's quiet over there. And I miss talking to y'all. So come on over until we get clicked in and everybody gets moved over to the Patreon site. We use the YouTube to broadcast. So I'm glad you're here. I see my friend Born Flippy One, Rick, is here. Haven't seen you in years. I just thought about talking to you the other day. And not the other day, today. I thought about calling you at some point. I was driving or something and I couldn't do it. And so it's good to see you here. Sean Holt is here. Good to see you, brother. Miss your face. Haven't seen you for a while face to face. Steve Clark is here. And Morgan Snow has jumped into the chat room. Randall Flagg is here. Somebody tell Barbara Danko, Barbie D, she might be sitting over in the Patreon. I don't know. and it's a little quiet there because the chat room isn't quite the same as the chat room here. I'm going to go over there and let her know. And somebody could let her know. Randall, you could let her know. I know you always show up over in the chat room. So let's see who all is there. There's Randall. You're over in the chat room over on the Patreon. An inauspicious way to start a show is by saying, hey, sorry, it was a mistake that we're going public instead of just on the private channel. But I'm glad we did because it's good to see you all. And so let's just get that link out there. And if you'll bear with me as I'm doing this, I can probably broadcast that link far and wide. Humbaris is here. Good to see you. I know who you are, and for some reason, at the moment, your first name, Heidi, this was slipping my Heidi? Humbaris? It's all the nicknames, the last name. Sometimes I space on the first name, even though I've seen you a million times. Welcome to the program. And let's see, tonight, because, gonna go dark just adds to that ghostly vibe, says Born Flippy. Yeah, it does. Normally, Friday nights is our ghost night, where I focus on paranormal and we do stuff like that. And tonight, we've had a weird week, and it's been a weird day, and just running around doing lots of work, getting things done. And around about 6 o'clock this evening, I said, I got a radio show to do tonight. I don't have a topic up for Ghost Friday, Ghost Day. And I got to go downstairs and take a look. And I went downstairs and I said, you know what? I'm wiped out. I think I'm going to just lay down for a little bit. And I did. Oh, my sword's hanging crooked. Woo. All right, guys, if your sword's hanging crooked, it's always proper to straighten it out. Wow. One of the pegs came loose, I think, that holds that in place. So, hey, Grumpy Stack. Hey, Kelly Moran. Good to see you. And everybody that's rolling in tonight. And so I came down here and I woke up about an hour ago, maybe. And I went, whoa. And I woke up. It was like really hard sleep. And perhaps that is what Friday means to you. Friday is one of those things where you go, the weekend, I can catch up. Now, of course, me, as I've said many times before on this show, because I work for myself in my own home, and we're always working, always on call. Not on call like, hey, it's 2:30 in the morning. Can you show up? Although some of you have called me at 2:30 in the morning, and that's okay too. If I'm awake, I'll pick it up. If I'm of mind, I'll pick it up. As a matter of fact, I'm just rabbit trailing here. Maybe a little ADHD radio, as Rocky Stucci and I had dubbed it once. We just kind of go, oh, squirrel. But there was a friend of mine. Some of you may know who he is in the paranormal world, Scott Grunwald. And this had to be, Rainey and I were living on the ranch. So this was back in 2008. So that tells you 15 years ago. And he had put out a post on his social media, which was probably a little less sophisticated than it is now, social media, and is widespread. We're talking 15 years ago. And he put out there, hey, and it was late night. He said, if anybody's out there, it's like midnight here in California. He says, if anybody's awake and you want to talk, give me a call. And he posted his phone number. So I saw that and I picked up my phone. I go, Scotty. And I had met him at the Stanley Hotel at one of the Ghost Hunters events. And so I think it was a Darkness Radio event. And so we got Scotty. And so we got to talking and we became good friends because of that. And so Friday night, and it was a Friday night, if I do remember. And so Friday night holds that as well. Born Flippy says, I love Fridays. It leads to Saturday and Sunday and fun day. Sunday, fun day. And so Friday nights, though, they have this special thing. I know when I was working for a company, it was always Friday night was always the great night that came because, the work week is over. I can enjoy my week. And what pops into my brain is I maybe didn't finish off what I was talking about Friday nights being Fridays being ghost days. That's the day I designated to do paranormal talk, even though we do more paranormal talk during the week on this show too. But Friday tends to be the kind of, let's let our hair down a little bit. Let's talk about ghosts. Let's do that kind of stuff. And of course, by the way, just a note to everybody listening, I've got a link for calling in to the show. We can't do that until after the show, until after the official radio show, because for some reason with our tech, something's not wired right. And I still, after months, have not figured it out. We're not broadcasting. When a caller calls in, you broadcast to the radio station, as do I, but it cuts off my sound internally. And so I can't hear you when you call into the show. So I've got kind of we don't call during the show. When we're done with this show in about, what is it? It's 9:11. So in about 45 to 50 minutes, then we'll go into the captain's cabin, and then we're off the stream, and I can actually hear you on my end. So if you're going to call in, stick around till the end of the show, and let's have a great and glorious captain's cabin. And tonight, let's have everybody calling in. And I'm so happy. You know how happy it makes me feel to see all of you coming in. I will admit, moving the show to Patreon was in an effort to try to make the show profitable, is probably a bad word, is a way to say, look, we got to find a way to make this show that I spend 40 hours a month on, this show. Is there a way to make it bring a little revenue stream in? Something where we can do something with it. And I saw all this glorious stuff on Patreon where people doing shows just like mine have 25,000 followers, and everybody's has to pay $4 to be a member on their channel. They're raking in $100,000 before taxes over on Patreon. And I thought, man, if we could get a sliver of that, there's cool things we could do with this show. And so that's why I moved it all to Patreon. And by the way, in case you don't know, it's not you, the audience. And by the way, spread the word so people know we're out here, that we're going tonight live over on YouTube. But it's not my disdain for the audience or anything like that that had me move it to Patreon. It was really my disdain for YouTube. Sorry, YouTube. It still carries the show, but it's usually in private. I'd been hit one too many times for stupidity. Somebody said something on my show in the after show, in the captain's cabin. And we didn't even talk about it. It was a comment, and I said, yeah, maybe we should talk about that one of these shows. And I got nailed like a month later. YouTube came in and said, you were spreading medical misinformation. And I wrote him and I said, we weren't talking about anything medical. It was revolving around the beginnings of COVID, but it was about the Department of Defense and stuff like that. And I said, we weren't talking anything medical. We weren't spreading any misinformation. We were just talking about what the news said. There was a headline that had come out that day. And I'm not even going to repeat it so I don't get tagged again. So, and because it was mentioned, YouTube blocked me for a week. And they blocked this broadcast for a week. Most of you remember, this was recent months. And I got a little pissed off because they wouldn't listen to my appeal. And I said, could you please point out what was said on my show that was actually disseminating medical misinformation? And they could never do that. Oh, we're sorry. We know this is frustrating for you, but we have to do it. And they were nice enough about it, but they could never even point out what it was. Could you tell me precisely, if you're going to dock me, if you're going to take my show down for a week, could you tell me what was said that was misinformation? And they never did. But I still got tagged and slapped on the knuckles for a week. And I said, that's it. I'm moving this to Patreon. And so, and I can make the Patreon shows public too. Maybe I should do a little bit more of that. But what I'm trying to do is coax people to come in. Come on in. If you love this show, you like this show, you've been listening to this show for years, throw the amount of a cup of coffee at this show once a month. That's all the Patreon thing was supposed to do. And I've had some people say, well, I can't do it. You know, it's, and I'm like, would you give me a cup of coffee once a month? And so anyway, that's my justification. And that's why we moved it to Patreon. In case anybody's wondering, it was just to try to thwart the evil ways of YouTube. But here we are, we're on YouTube. We got to use YouTube anyway. to broadcast the show, even when it's in private over on. So this show over on YouTube is supposed to be unlisted. Maybe I didn't list it as unlisted, and that's why you're finding it. And you got an announcement. That could be it. I got to click the little unlisted button so nobody sees it. So it must have just gone public, which is cool. I'm glad of that. I'm glad you're here. As a matter of fact, if I go to YouTube, I just want to take a look at it. I want to see what's going on over here. Yeah, there it is. It's right there. It's right there in public. So I just listed it as a public show. That's cool. That's groovy. That's happening. I'm hip. And it's all cool here. Coolsville. Population, us. So I hear you, Steve Clark. And I hear you that loud and clear. I don't want anybody to feel like I'm trying to dig into their pockets or anything like that. I understand tight. And so that's why I'm still trying to do once in a while a free show. Usually I try to do Fridays as a free show. I didn't list it that way. It was accidental tonight, which is great. It's providential. That's God working in mysterious ways. And so here we are. Oh, you saw it on Facebook. Oh, cool. And the link is there. Well, that's great. Yeah, Steve, I did tag you on Facebook. Yeah, if I click on the link on Facebook, there's no link. I don't know where it's taking us. Other than maybe I should just copy the link right now and send it out. Hold on. I'm going to do that. If you can put up with me doing this live on radio while we're doing the live show. And yes, we are a radio show. We're not just a podcast, which there's nothing wrong with that, but we do broadcast on a radio station, which we're doing live right now. Hey, radio listeners, I hope you're enjoying this. You can come on over, I guess, and also see. Here it is. I'm gonna share this video link. Copy. Let me do this, folks. Hang on with me. Hang on. Don't get frustrated because I'm doing this right now. Be happy. We'll get more of our listeners in, perhaps. And if you would do the same, join us live now on YouTube. Boom. I'm going to put the link. Boom. There's the link. Let's see what it does. There it is. There it is. There it is. And I can copy in people like this. Russ, Dan. Isn't this riveting live radio? We'll get to the topic here if you all hang on. We'll get there. I'll make it there. Trust me, squirrel. I'll make it there. And I'm just tagging a couple of people so people know we're doing this. And it's live. It's live right now. Right now. Let me tag a couple of more people just so people know we're here. And boom, boom, boom. And everybody else, if you're enjoying the show and you're in the chat room, share the link. Let people know we're out here. So boom, I just shared it with a few people. And I got to get Leslie in there so she knows. Although Leslie comes over to the Patreon as well. So boom, 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 boom. There, I got some business out of the way. Look at that. We're talking away. We're having a good time, and I did business at the same time. I'm multitasking. So, Captain, the lithium crystals cannot take much more of this. Ain't that right? Woo, man. So Molly is here. Molly is doing well and as sassy as ever. Oh, Steve Clark's Molly. That's your horse, right? If I'm not mistaken. Hey, Barbie D, good to see you. Glad you made it in. My mistake is going to be something that you can enjoy tonight because we're going live and we're back at the regular old chat room, eh? So, there we go. My roof cost me a little over what my place cost me. Doesn't that suck, Steve? We have down here where my studio is in the lower level. You could call it a basement. It's a basement, but it's a little more finished than that. Still got concrete floors. We painted the floors. It's like a bright blood red down here on the floors in my studio. And the master bedroom is behind me in that room. That's all the red floors. And then Out there is the big family room and Rainy's studio, but it's kind of the secondary family room. The living room is upstairs above my head, but down here we got a big TV down here and this sofas and it's all concrete. We painted the floors with concrete paint, basement floor paint. It was more of a dusty, creamy green color, olive drabby color on the floor out there. And in here, the reds. Well, we had water leak, as you know. We had to cancel the show on Wednesday because we had water pouring in our windows. Hi. Well, come on over.
Can I tell you
There's
two
Ellery.
jokes? Can I tell you 2 jokes?
You want to tell 2 jokes?
Yeah.
All right, here she is all the way from Las Vegas visiting us tonight. Ellery. This is my youngest, folks, for those of you who don't. What are you eating? Oh, it's a
Jimmy
Subway.
John's.
Oh, Jimmy John's. Jimmy John's. Okay, tell your joke. Is it appropriate for radio?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Knock,
Okay.
knock.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
You're up.
You're up. Who? You're a poo. Oh, you're a poo. Wonka.
Okay, another one.
But ching. Okay.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
You're a mop.
You're a mop. Who? You're a mop who? You're a mop who?
I mean, eat mop. I eat mop.
Eat mop?
I eat mop.
I eat my poo. I eat my poo. Oh, get out of here.
He eats his poo.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Proven by a knock knock joke. Hey, I got one for you. Knock knock.
Who's there?
Nazi. Nazi.
Nazi. Who?
Shut up. He'll ask the questions here. It only works if you can slap them. I can't slap my 8-year-old. Yeah, poo jokes never get old, Rick. That's right. And I thought she was getting her sandwich making skills sharpening up. Yeah, did you bring Dad a sandwich? Okay. All right, I got to carry on with this. Thanks for visiting. Grab your belly. All right, see you later. Have fun. Bye.
My nails.
Yeah. Those are your nice kitty paste-on nails. Have fun with those. Bye. All right. Familial interlude number 1 out of the way. And we don't do as many of those these days because the show's different format. And I don't remember what the hell I was saying or what I was talking about, but let's get back into whatever it was I was saying. I know I was talking about Fridays. I suppose I could go back to that. And do you know I actually have a list of like 25 of the best things about Fridays? We'll get to that. But this special energy we were talking about, the power of anticipation is one of the main reasons people are happy on Friday nights. It's the power of anticipation. You're anticipating, I'm letting my hair down. I'm going to have a good day and I'm going to have a good weekend because unless you work weekends, Friday nights aren't all that special. So when people are looking forward to something, their mood improves. It's the weekend. Even though I'm always on call because I work here at home and I work all the time, Fridays are still kind of because Fridays kind of lighten the load a little bit. You're moving into the weekend. People don't need things. It's not so vital. There's not so many urgencies when it comes to work. And this last couple of weeks has been kind of busy, which is nice. And so I've been working up a storm. Little projects, nothing big, not a big project going on, but all kinds of little projects, logos, illustrations, stuff like that for clients, and some of them long-standing clients. So it's nice. It's return. I did this. Here, look at this. This is just an ink sketch, but I did that sketch for the archaeology book. That archaeology book is coming along slow, isn't it? It's because it's on the back burner. I'm doing it as I can go. I've still got a few illustrations left to finish. I'm going to try to get that finished so that goes to press by next week with my friend Pete Pierre, who I founded Little Platinum Books with him. We haven't done much with it, but he's published a couple of books that we've done. And this one will come out through Pete and Little Platinum Books. But this is the ink drawing. And I should show you how that looks once I put color. I go in on Photoshop and I color these images rather than paint them by hand. I could paint them watercolor, but I wanted to do something different. And I've got a couple of these. You've seen some of them before. And I got a wild hair. You've heard it before, but I might read you some of the text from this little book. It takes like 10 to 15 minutes to read the whole text of the book. We might do that tonight. But if I get there. But let me show you what this looks like when I do it when I did it in color. Hang on. I'm going to call this up so I can show it to you. Let's see. We got this. We got that one. That's not the right one. But open. Let's open this up, and we'll see what we've got. How to be an archaeologist, and we go. That's the name of the book. How to be an archaeologist. I go into the illustrations. This is the one on Leakey, because it's got Louis Leakey in the picture. If you didn't notice that, you might not have recognized him. This guy right here, this older guy. I can't see my monitor at the moment. That's Louis Leakey. If you don't know who Louis Leakey was, I'll tell you. Anthropologist, archaeologist. Mostly, I think he died like 50 years ago, something like that. But he's mentioned in the text of this book as the main character is off to college, and they're drinking a toast to Louis Leakey. And so let me show this to you because I'm distracting myself and I'm not getting it done. Here's what the color version looks like. And if you're listening just on radio, you're not going to be able to see this. I'm sorry. You can go over to my YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. And you can take a look at this. And if you want to join us over there just to see the videos. All right, everybody. Here we go. I'm going to call this up and you can take a peek at it. It slides and your computer. Now, if you're joining me, you're going, this is it. This is Friday night. I don't know that I'm all that thrilled about this being the show for tonight, but hey, it's okay. And enjoy while we're doing it. Here we go. It's uploading. It's uploading. Now, while that's uploading, take a look at this again. This is Louis Leakey right here. He's in the background. He's not really there in the text. They're kind of drinking a toast to him. And so now when I did this in color, take a look at that again. Here's how, when I go to Photoshop and I do my color in Photoshop, digital art, it looks like this. Boom. So there's the final of that. Hello. Hi, baby. Come here for 2 seconds. My beautiful wife is here. Uh-oh. It's only a matter of minutes. Hold on. Let me get over here. And I accidentally went live over on YouTube tonight, nice. But there we go. There's Rainey.
It's me.
It's her. How you doing?
I'm doing.
Did you have a fun time shopping?
I did.
Good.
I'm upstairs watching Ink Master. Now I want a tattoo.
Ink Master. I'll tattoo you.
No, you won't.
Mm-hmm.
You won't even practice.
Yeah. Let's see it. Come here.
I don't want a Sharpie tattoo.
Not like last time. And so, yeah, I am working on becoming a tattoo artist. So appropriate. It's raining here. Raining here. Yeah, we got this floody basement, though. We found out what the problem is and why it flooded the other night, and it's going to take a little bit of work to get it done. It's going to get done, but it hasn't started yet. They got to dig up the backyard and the side yard, regrade things, and blah, 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 all of that. So that's all. So I'm glad you peeked in.
Yeah.
It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you, too. So, yeah, within the next half hour, I'm sure you'll hear me down here swishing water.
Yeah, that'll be fun. It doesn't ever come over to this side.
It did.
So it's over there.
Over there.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Did it get wet? How did it get wet over there?
I don't know.
This water comes in way over there.
It's been super wet over there.
Oh, crappy. Could be.
No idea.
Could be.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Nice to see you.
Bye.
I'm glad you stopped in.
Yeah, it's been fun.
All right.
See you
All right.
later.
Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye.
All right. That was the wife. So thank you, Barbie D. So here, I'll put it back up. There it is. So that's how it looks. And so that guy over there. I don't know if you can see my mouse when I'm circling him. The ghosty looking guy, the Obi-Wan kind of guy that shows up in Star Wars at the end of the movie. That's how I got him looking. And the text for that page says this. It goes like this. Now, this is the kid. Remember the kid? The kid, he finds a pipe in the river, about a 10-year-old kid, 11-year-old kid, takes it up to the curiosity shop, finds out it's a 100-year-old meerschaum pipe with a image of Admiral Lord Nelson on it, and it gets his curiosities piqued, and he wants to be an archaeologist as he grows up. And so the book follows him through school, uh, um, everything he has to study, all of that up until he's an archaeologist, 25 years later, and he makes this amazing find in the book. And it's nothing like King Tut's tomb. It's just he's uncovered something in Egypt and the meaning of it and so on. And so that's what the book is about. I'm going to read some of it tonight for you. Maybe even the whole thing because it's short enough. It's a kid's book, but it's a kid's book he wrote for adults. Many of you who are regulars on this show have heard some of this before, if not all of it before. But this page that has Louis Leakey on it, it goes like this. He's gone off to college. It says, your home away from home was the library on campus. It was there that you researched and studied your arse off. There were good times with your mates. You drank plenty of beer. You had to do something that helped you to steer people away from thinking you overly freaky. For your studious focus made you seem rather geeky, not to mention your scholarly pallor. So creepy. But you were, after all, following the steps of Lou Leakey, whose condensed milk and cognac was anything but cheeky. So here's to the beers, and here's to the cheers, and here's to the books for the next 3 to 4 years. That's the text that is opposite this picture in the book. So I've got him drinking a toast to Louis Leakey. And so that's why that picture is in the book. The picture I'm working on now, the next one, I don't even have it sketched out yet. I've started sketching. It's not worth showing yet. But that's it's got a curled up skeleton in a grave with the sword by it and stuff, and it's talking about what happens next. Here is the you got patience for this? You want to hear this? I can show you some of the imagery. I don't know that I have it all. Let's try this. I could try this. Let's see something here. And I'll read some of this book to you. Maybe the whole thing. And I can show you some of the imagery, just so you know. I'm just refreshing memories. Let's go over here because this is going to be coming out pretty soon. I want to do this, and I want to share my screen with you. Let's share the entire screen. All right, boom, and share. Yammo, look at that. Let's go over here. Let's go to this. Here's the book. That's the pages I just showed you. That's how it looks in the book. Let's go all the way back to the beginning. This isn't the cover. That's the title page on the inside, how to be an archaeologist, and then all the legal stuff on the back. So you're looking at a 2-page spread here. The left side is the left page. The right side's the right page. There's the inner title page, the dedication, and then it goes into the story. And this is some of the art. Many of you have seen some of this stuff before. But the story goes, and I'll read you the story. And it's short and sweet. It's told in a rhyme. It's not quite, would you say? It's not quite a poem. And it's not quite, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. You had to put in gutters, says Humbaras. Yeah, our gutters are good, and our gutters are even clean. So I looked up there just today. Roger Rabbit says, in a perfect world, I would load up my tractor and come up there and do the grading work for you on your yard. Man, would that be cool? Well, the guy came out. We don't own the house yet. We're working on that. But the brother-in-law to the older woman who owns the house, he's a 70-year-old gent, came over. And he said he built this house like 35 years ago, 30 years ago, and a bunch of the houses in our neighborhood. and he said he was talking about all the house. It's a good house, solid. It's a biggest house in the area, so on and so on. And he's going to bring a team out here, and they're going to grade the yards for us and all of that. So thank you, Steve. I think I will. Hey, who gave you a follow, Helene? Oh, okay. That was Roger to Helene. All right, so here we go. I'm going to read you this little story. I want you to enjoy this and see what you think of this. Here's the whole story, and it's done with those pictures I started flashing through here and showing you. It's fully illustrated, and it goes like this: How to be an archaeologist. And if you've heard this before, indulge me because I love reading it. Like when I would read to my kids, I love reading the same books over again. I love reading the poems. I love reading Yeats. I love reading all this stuff over and over again. So hopefully you'll enjoy this. Goes like this. Starts with the little kiddies wading in the river. You had no idea. You were just out to play, wading in the shallows of the river that day. When your bare toes dislodged it, broke it loose from the clay, a pipe carved in meerschaum, 100 years in the cray. Someone had lost it or tossed it away off the bridge in your town that spanned River Cray. The pipe sank to the bottom and for the next 100 or so years lay quietly waiting for you to appear. The pipe's stem was broken, the bowl caked with muck. The hand-carved face was intact. What luck! A man with a bicorn hung over his brow, looked you straight in the eyes and implored you somehow to take the first step on a that would lead to the rest of your life and your life works creed. The pipe was of Admiral Lord Nelson. He had a bicorn hat on. With your riverbed fine tucked deep in your pocket, he was up to the town. You sped like a rocket. Where there on the corner of High Street and Crockett was a curious old shop where the keeper's old docket could surely tell all of the pipe in your pocket. Sure enough, it was old and much older than old. It was ancient, antique, and bore history untold. The face on the bowl was of Admiral Lord Nelson, whose defeat to the fleet of Napoleon had won him great honor and glory, and a statue on a column, and even his face on a pipe carved in meerschaum. So much to be learned, so much history discovered from an old ancient pipe that you found underwater. And what of the artist who took time to create it? What were his reasons? Why did he not date it? For whom was it made? Why was it important? Could these questions be answered, or would they ever remain dormant? Carefully, delicately, you clean off the tarnish, add a new stem and a light coat of varnish, and up on your bookshelf you set up a display where it will stand and remain until that one day when the right time arrives to light it and smoke it. Only you will know when, and you will not postpone it. Soon middle school came, then high school too. Homecoming was fun and football was cool. Phi Beta Kappa and the activities of college took a distinctive backseat to exploration and knowledge. You wanted to know things. You craved all the answers. You needed your bachelor's degree to advance your academic, educational, scholarly compliances in history, anthropology, geography, and the sciences. Even math and lit were stepping stone reliances that would ready you, steady you, and give you the tools to pursue your life's goal. You must follow the rules. Then the page I showed you with Robert Leakey. Your home away from home, or Louis Leakey. Your home away from home was the library on campus. It was there that you researched and studied your ass off. There were good times with your mates. You drank plenty of beer. You had to do something that helped you to steer people away from thinking you overly freaky, for your studious focus made you seem rather geeky. Not to mention your scholarly pallor, so creepy. But you were, after all, following the steps of Lou Leakey, whose condensed milk and cognac was anything but cheeky. So here's to the beers, and here's to the cheers, and here's to the books for the next 3 to 4 years. Archaeology isn't just digging in the dirt. It's not always about treasure, adventure, or curse. It's the study of people and their material remains. It even goes back to prehistory days. Sometimes it's in writing or carvings or inscription on temples and shrines and graves of distinction. But sometimes you find it only in pieces of pottery, papyrus, clay fragments, or feces. Everything tells the story of our past, and you need to be ready with the knowledge you've massed. Knowing stuff in your head is only the start. There's the other stuff too, and it speaks to your heart. Now that you've hung your BA on the wall, it's time to get serious, set your mind to the long haul of earning your master's, writing papers and thesis, of travel and internships, working as an assistant. Anthropology, it's said, is the study of people, how they hunted and farmed, built monuments unspeakable. You study ancient languages and decipher religions, examine statues and pottery and tribal divisions. From the Maya to the Aztec, the Anasazi and Hun, the Indus Valley migration and ancient Egypt 101. You absorb all the books, take your tests and read papers, siphoning all that you can from these academic capers. Soon the curricular mist of scholarship parts. You know what you want, you know where it starts. You hear the call of the ages through the dynastic haze. The riddle of the Sphinx reaches through the malaise. The voices have spoken. The gods have regaled you, despite the minutia academia gave you. To the gods, demigods, and spirits of the dead, to the land of the pharaohs, you know you must head. A handful of years have now passed through your journal. Abu Simbel and Khufu only lent you a kernel of the grandeur that lies neath the sands neath your feet. The final step is begun for your beginning to complete. Identified and applied, and now signed with the ministry, you've been granted permission to uncover history. A shovel in one hand and a trowel in the other, your third hand extended to a benefactor and sponsor. At long last you stand in Ra's blazing simmer, sinking your spade into your own quest for treasure. You won't find it in books. They don't teach it in school. The universities won't break with their cardinal rule that says it's all science, just history, nothing more. They give you lectures and letters, then matriculate you to the door. But it's there in that moment, after years of hard work, of reading, writing papers, and digging in the dirt, that you find yourself breathing the air of the ancients. You've moved rocks, sifted silt, and now here you face it. Eternal life, it was written, resides in the name. Remembrance and utterance is the name of that game. So you drop to your knees, assuaging your fears, and for the very first time in thousands of years, you gaze into stone eyes that shed only stone tears. Your fingers brush lightly on glyphs carved so bold, and there on the lintel, where in antiquity was told the story of this man now 3,000 years old, in the recounting of his life and his deeds of great fame, lay the resurrection to be found only in his name. His face, your words to his ears. You speak out his name not uttered in years, and the statue before you breaks free of its bonds, reconnecting with life in the light of the gods. When the din of discovery has settled and flown, you return to your cottage on the river back home. There's so much more work, so much more to uncover. You know you'll be restless till you return in November. For the next 6 months, it's all about writing. You must catalog your season and publish your findings. On your way to your study, you get a glimpse in the mirror. The ruddy young lad you no longer see there. The man reflected is a sun-leathered tan, whose temples are flecked with the color of sand. It's time, you say to the glass with a smile. Lord Nelson's been waiting for a very long while. And there it is, folks. That is How to Be an Archaeologist. And then, of course, all the illustrations that go with it. And I don't think I have any more that are in a format I can show you, but we follow this boy as he grows up from 10 years old to probably about 40 in the book, in that little poem. And I don't know that I have any of these in PDF format, so I can show them to you. Maybe not. Perhaps not. Perhaps not. So what I'll do once again, just for the those listening over on my YouTube channel, I'm going to share my screen one more time. And we'll take the entire screen, share. We're going to go over here to this program, and we're going to go all the way back to the beginning. Remember, I showed you this, the inside title pages, and so on. Here's the 2-page spread as it spreads out. Here's, if you're looking at the screen, this is the young boy. He's down, you see way down in the bottom, you see his, the pipe is there, and he finds the pipe. And he picks it up, and there's the pipe with the image of Admiral Lord Nelson on the pipe wearing his bicorn hat. And he runs it up to the curiosity shop. And that's where he checks it out, and it piques his curiosity. And he puts it up he mounts it, puts it up on a shelf, and says, I'll know the right time when I can smoke you. Can't do it now. And then he goes off to college, as you can see there. And then the picture with Leakey. And then we've got all these pages that are not illustrated yet. There's like a 4 in between there. And then when he has the discovery at the end, toward the end, eternal life was written. It says here he is as an adult, and he's an archaeologist, and he sees the face on the statue, and they read his name for the first time. And that's all the illustrations that are done. So there's 6 illustrations I have left to do, it looks like, in this book. So that gives you an idea of what's left in that. So how's that for a Friday night? Let me stop sharing my screen. Loved it, says Steve Clark. Thank you. Michelle Canham Free has popcorn. Right on. Grabs popcorn and listens. That was Barbie D. And so that's the book. I'm finishing that up. That's going to go to press next week. But what about this Friday thing? This is Friday. I don't necessarily have a ghost story to tell you. I could tell you rehashed ghost stories, things we've talked about before. Maybe we can jump into some of that in the captain's cabin. If you want to talk and come on, and you can call in during the captain's cabin with that link I gave you. And we've got about 9 minutes left of this show on the radio, and then we'll go out to the captain's cabin. So I'll encourage any of you listening on the radio, come on over to my YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/Scotty Roberts, and you can join us for the after show. The captain's cabin are so aptly dubbed by the listeners. But if I look at the thing about Fridays, we talk about the power of anticipation for Friday. For me, reading this story was letting my hair down. I was looking forward. I wasn't planning on doing it, but there it is. I've been working on that so it's fresh in my mind again. It's a feeling of excitement. It's positive change. This is what Fridays do to us. And that can be contagious. You can spread your contagion. I saw somebody today, I'm listening to on YouTube, or I'm sorry, Instagram. There's a guy, I think he's called Infantry Guru or something like that. He's an army dude, probably around 40 to 45-ish. And he gives these little every day. Sometimes he's in his fatigues, sometimes he's in street clothes, and he gives these little uplifting messages in about 2 minutes. of time. And today he said, we said, you know, what can make your day good. He says, make somebody else's day today. And that's not the words he used, but something to that effect. And he says, find somebody, call them out, and uplift them. If you don't feel uplifted yourself, if you don't feel like you've got anything good going on, if you don't feel uh, good about um, your day, what's the best way to overcome that? Go find somebody and uplift them, make their day. That's that fish philosophy for work. You know, being there, bring your attitude, make somebody's day. That's what makes your work day work. Even when you don't like it and you hate it, you bring your own attitude, you show up, you're there with a good attitude, and you make somebody else's day. And thank you, Humbaris, Heidi. I think it's Heidi. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I see you a million times and have a million connections, and I know who you are. I know who Humbaris is. I know but I can't remember if that's your first name that goes with it. I could be wrong. Sorry about that. Don't take offense at that. It's just my feeble brain. So, but thank you for that. Love archaeology and paleontology, she says. And so make somebody's day. I hope this helps make your day. Um, I've said about my radio show, this is who I am. My radio show is about the things I love, the things I like. It's the diary of my life. For the last 22 years, I've been doing radio. You can hear shows of mine from 22 years ago, believe it or not. And this format with Odyssey Radio for the last 40 years. I think in 2019 is when we started in this format. And that was just the most recent incarnation. Before that, I was doing radio with Rocky. I was doing it over on Odyssey Radio when it was owned by someone else. And so this is me. This is why I went 5 nights a week. And then Rainey was kind of like at times she was like, "Wow, you sure put out a lot of time on that radio show." And I said, "It's what I do. I don't go bowling. I don't go hunting. I don't go drinking with the boys. Um, I don't do much of anything outside the home because we're parents. We got kids at home. I've got my radio show, and I usually broadcast it at night so it doesn't conflict with the family schedule. But so I cut it back to 3 nights a week just to make some time. Then I picked up the show with Wendy Robertson on Tuesdays, and then I do Sunday mornings at 9 a.m., and that one's always open for the public. So, see you, Steve. You're getting tired. Might be around 4 a.m. is too early. Getting up around 4. Yeah, I got up at 5 this morning. I got up at 5 o'clock this morning, and I heard some tinkering around upstairs, and I walked up, and my son's still up in his room. I said, "Son, what are you doing?" "Oh, I'm just messing around in my room, cleaning it up and stuff." I said, "Well, that's a good thing." I said, "You realize it's 5 a.m.?" "No, I didn't realize it was that late." So he didn't get up till like 2 this afternoon. I finally got him up to mow the grass. "Gotta mow the grass today, son." Wasn't mad at him. It's just like, "You're becoming a vampire. You need to switch those hours around. In another 6 weeks, you're gonna have school starting. You're gonna be really sorry if you're on a night schedule." So, but he's a kid. He'll get over it. What time do you get up, Barbie D? Late or early? So, I don't know what I was saying because I drifted. I drift in and out of my topics. But, I look forward to being here. I look forward to you guys. I actually miss you guys, believe it or not. I was thinking today when I'm doing radio, I love doing the Patreon is for a reason, it's a business reason, but there's only a handful of us over there that can chat, and Barbie D is one of them, Randall Flagg is another one, Josh Kemp, Leslie, and other people, but, I miss all of you guys being in here, and it's so nice to see you all tonight, by a fluke, believe it or not. So it's nice to have you here. Yo, you stay up late or you get up late, Barbie D? I hear the pitter patter of little feet going up and down the stairs, which is the stairway's on the other side of that wall. Oh, hi. Good night. You're going to bed?
Yeah.
I love you. Say goodnight to everybody.
You know,
This is Ellery, my youngest.
you know that.
So my youngest of 6 children. You know I have 6 children? Oh, cool. So, do you know you're the youngest of 6? Yeah. What do you think about that? What's it do for you?
That I'm the favorite.
Oh, you're the favorite?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Do you see my drink anywhere? I don't know where I left it. Maybe I left it outside. Would you do me a favor? Would you go in the little fridge out there and grab me a sugar zero, Mountain Dew Zero, please. Mountain Dew Zero. Can't do the sugar. We miss you, says Michelle Cannon for you. Well, you can all come over and join me if you want over on my Patreon. Hopefully, thank you. You open it all right? Oh, no. So, Morgan Snow, 4:30 a.m. Monday through Friday. I'm looking forward to the weekend. Nice.
Are you done yet?
No, almost done. Oh, we're almost done on the radio. But then I'm going to stay down here for the captain's cabin. Hey, radio audience, it's 53, it's 54. It's 9:50, it's 54 minutes we've been going. And so in about 30 seconds, we're going to have to say goodbye to the radio audience. Then we're going to play a couple of trailers and stuff like that, a couple of ads, personal ads, and then not personal, you know what I mean. And then we got to say goodbye to the radio audience.
How long
So
is the captain's
I don't know. We'll see. Captain's cabin is kind of open-ended. It's there's kind of no time. It's like guidelines. So all of you over in Radio Land, I want to say thank you for being here. Thank you. Don't talk over the radio host. And so I'm going to say live long and prosper, and everybody else stick around for the captain's cabin.
Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid Radio Program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad, so he can take me to Disneyland.
Hey folks, this is Scotty Roberts, and this is the Intrepid Radio broadcast. I've been broadcasting for about 20 years now, covering such topics as science, politics, the paranormal, weird science, weird world history, archaeology, and the paranormal. Everything from ghosts to cryptids to creepy things that go bump in the night. So every week I bring you 3 new episodes. Come and join my channel and also be a patron to this site. So see the details below, and we'll see you here. Well, and welcome to the captain's cabin. Good to have you all here tonight. Glad we've got everybody here in the chat room. Good to see you guys. Sarah asked, what did we talk about tonight? Kind of everything. Everything and nothing. We put it all into one big swath of ADHD radio. And Rick, are you still around there? Born Flippy, good friend of mine. Good to see you in here tonight. And Heidi Humbaris. Humbaris is Heidi. Maybe she didn't want me to reveal that. I don't know. But that's Heidi. I wasn't clicking right away. I recognized who you were and all that. You know how the brain works. And I'm talking. So everybody, welcome. Glad you're here. Glad you joined us. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, when everybody started pouring in and commenting, I'm like, how are people seeing this? Usually, I always have to on Patreon, which is private. I have to put the YouTube up as an unlisted YouTube, and it pulls the stream from that into Patreon. And tonight, I must have not hit the unlisted button. And so it went public. So I'm glad for the mistake, because I'm glad you were all here. Discussing an ancient hero card would make a nice continuing segment, says Sarah Yusuf. I could do that. We could talk about an ancient heroes card. As many of you know, there's a 40. Hey, I'm gonna send you off to bed. You came to say goodnight. and that you love me. Why don't you say hi to everybody again? I know you're disappointed, but I thought you were going to bed. Are you going to bed? You want to hang out for a little bit? It's going to be mostly just me talking and anybody who calls in. By the way, guys, if you want to call in, here's the link to call into the show, just like old times. So you can call in. We got no Uncle Dave tonight, of course. He's here only in spirit. But if you want to call in and join conversation, you got something you want to talk about, you can do that. You can come on in. So, Ellery, that was a fast hair change, says Barbie D. And she's got mom's hair, which is nice. That's the kind of hair mom had when I met her. Big, thick, long.
You're gonna ruin my hair.
Don't raise your arms too high. You got that midriff on. You're gonna show off your stuff. You don't want to do that. So, yeah, that was a fast hair change. So, Ancient Heroes. 30 years ago, I did a set of trading cards with some friends of mine from college, and they wanted to do biblical trading cards because trading cards was the big, hot and heavy thing in the early 90s. So we did a set of biblical trading cards, and my input on the idea was, let's not scream Bible. This is Sunday school material, is what people would think. I said, let's try to make them look cool as the Marvel and the DC comic book cards. You out of here? Hey, I love you. Good night. Bye. See ya. Good night. I love you too. Pop. I just popped you. So, all right. I will. I'll sneak in if you're not sleeping. And so we did a set of trading cards. We wanted them to look as cool as the Batman cards and stuff. Of course, it wasn't superheroes. It was ancient heroes. It was old heroes of the Bible. And we put that out. And so I did 50 illustrations for those cards. And then on the back sides, my buddy Steve wrote all the back sides of it. And his wife at the time, she was still my partner today. We're not partners nowadays. We're just partners in the project. She owns the project outright. And she called me a couple of months ago and said, hey, I trying to open up some of these old Ancient Heroes files and I'm not successful. And then we got to talking and she said, I'm thinking of maybe trying to relaunch this set of cards. And maybe try to update them a little bit, make them more, what's the word I'm looking for? Compatible, germane to a more modern audience, build a good website to go with them and so on. And so we got to talking and I said, I'm looking at some of this old art. Some of it's okay. It holds itself. It's art I did, comic book art I did 30 years ago. And I said, so I'd love to redo some of these. And so she wanted me to go ahead and redo the cards. And so what I did was I took the old cards that existed and I went and I touched up the art. Some of them I redid the art. We were missing some cards we couldn't find. And also, though, a lot of the cards had very bland backgrounds. I just did the characters and did a graded yellow background or something like that behind the character. And I thought this would be a great time to go in and maybe beef those up a little bit, add some backgrounds, touch up the characters. I was able to go in digitally, and this is all digitally, other than the few cards that I drew by hand. And so I went in and I redid the cards. We were coming up about a 45 card set. And she's looking into republishing those. And let's see, here's one of the cards I did. This gives you an idea of what I did with these cards. Here, let's bring these in to the show and you can get an idea. This was the very first one I did. And I would have drawn Moses a little different now, but this was the original art, and I didn't redo him. Let's add him in here. So you see the card on the left is the way the card appeared 30 years ago. That's the old logo, Ancient Heroes. And you've got the art here. And then over on the right-hand side is how I revitalized the card. You can see if you look close enough, you can see even things like in his face. I just reworked some of the lighting in the face, and this was all watercolor, but I now digitized it and I was able to put in a new background and able to touch up stuff. I redesigned the logo, things like that. And there's one other one as well that I've got in this state that shows you both the old and the new. And that's this one. So we could talk about, as Sarah alluded, we could talk about some of these cards because there's historical messages to them. Like this card I'm going to load up now. It's about Abraham and Sarah and how Abraham was called by God from Ur of the Chaldees, it said, which is the city of Ur in present-day Iraq. And here's this card. We've got Abraham and his wife Sarah. And this is the old card on the left you can see what I meant by the backgrounds. And so what I did in this card, I revitalized the art a little bit, bumped up the lights and the darks, and I added the background with the ziggurat in Ur, which you can go visit the ruins of that today. And they say Abram was a priest, and his father was the high priest at Ur. This was not Jewish. He's the father of the Jewish nation, also the father of the Arabic nations. And according to the story, his grandsons and so on. But this is how I changed this card up. And of course, updated looks really good. Thank you, Sarah. A Major Arcana said, yeah, wouldn't that be cool? No relation, I think. So anyway, so that's some of those. That's some of the cards. That's how they looked. And I've got more cards. You saw some of them in that quick little video that I played. And I'm losing audience. Everybody's dropping off, so nobody's interested in this part of the show, I think. But I can show you, as long as it's just us now, we merry band of brothers and sisters. Take a look at these cards as they flash by you. These are some of the more recent cards. I'll play this a minute long. Here we go. And you can see some of this in these cards. The updated cards. They go by pretty quick. Deborah and Barack. Deborah, the woman of fire, we did a show on a couple of weeks ago. Abraham and the stars, Gideon, Deborah, Goliath, Elijah, Pharaoh, David, Elijah, the chariot of fire, Abraham, Pharaoh's daughter, Elijah, the rock. That's how the back sides of the cards look. So that's how that looks. I think you were able to hear me. I turned the mute off on the mic so you could hear me over the ad. So that's what that was all about. Yep, I played that during the break, so I could, and I showed it to you again here, just so you could get an idea. I'd love to show you all the cards, but they're not all converted over to be able to pull them into the radio show, so I won't. But I'm going to do one card here, and I'm going to pull it up. I'll convert it over because I'm really kind of proud of how this one turned out. This is one of the last cards that I did. And let's get in there. Ancient Heroes. And it's the card of Hagar. Now, do you remember who Hagar was in the story of Abraham? Let's see. Where have I got her? Right here. Hagar. I'm going to pull this image up. We're going to convert that into a PDF so I can show it to you. Let's save as a PDF. And I'll show you this one. We'll talk about her for a second. We could do a whole show on Hagar and some of the implications around who she was in the biblical narrative and in the story. So let's call her up here. Present slides, my computer, upload file. I got to go through like 8 steps to get to this. Here's Hagar. We'll bring her up. It's uploading now. Hey, Kelly. Kelly Bell. Here we go. Here's Hagar. All right. Now, this is a card I did just like last week as I was finishing up all the illustrations for the set. And you can see the difference between the way the cards looked back in the past, how they look now. Here's Delaney. I'm going to add her in. Delaney Pearl Jones. Oh, I can't. There you are. You're down below me. You're in the dark. I see your glasses reflecting. So this is Hagar, and she was in the biblical narrative. She was Abram's wife, Sarai, or Sarah. This was her slave, and she was an Egyptian woman. And remember, God made this promise to Abraham in the biblical story that he would be the father of many nations. And he puts him out in front of the stars and he says, count the stars in the sky. He says, as impossible as that is to do, that's how your descendants will be, like the stars in the sky. And so, but Abraham is like 100 years old. And Sarah is like 99. And of course, as we know, people lived a little longer back in those old biblical stories. And so Sarah is like, she doesn't believe. The 3 angels visit Abraham, tell him he's going to have a child. Sarah's going to give birth. And she laughs. She's eavesdropping from behind the tent wall. And she kind of laughs. And she ends up naming the firstborn son when he's born Isaac, which means she left. And but she in waiting for God to fulfill his promise, she's not getting pregnant. She'd never had a child. She's in her late 90s, according to the story. And she's not having children yet. And I think it was a little different in the biblical structure of the ages and so on. If the age was metaphoric, I don't know, or whatever it was. But if she was 99, it was she made 99 like the new 45, probably. And or 99 is the new 45. And so she couldn't have kids. And so what does she do? She takes her slave, Hagar, and has her slave have sex with her husband, Abram, so that she can be the surrogate mother. And he could have his children. So she tries to rush the process. And then Hagar, what does Hagar do? She's the slave, but she starts, according to the story, holding Sarah in a little bit of contempt. She starts, and I don't think she was being nasty. This is Sarah's interpretation of how she is, but she's like, hey, I've got the kid. I'm having a kid for the master. I'm bearing the master's kid. He's your husband, but I'm having the kid, which was an all-important thing. And so Sarah wants her driven out of the camp. And the relationship's getting rough, and Hagar takes off. And then an angel, according to the story, appears to Hagar in the desert, says, go back. You got to go back. So she goes back. And she bears a son, and his name is Ishmael. And he's the father of the Arabic nations, according to this etiology of events, of historic events. And then her situation with Sarah deteriorates. And Sarah says to Abraham, I want you to kick her out of the camp. Because her son Ishmael, as they're growing up, then Sarah has Isaac, and Ishmael's teasing, brutally bullying or teasing Isaac. And so Sarah wants Hagar and her son driven out. Drives him out into the wilderness. She's got her son now, so let's get rid of Hagar. So Hagar's out in the wilderness, and she thinks her son's going to die. She hides him under a bush because of the sun. And God comes to her and shows her a fountain, a spring, and they're able to drink and live. And, of course, her son grows up. And she lives. And that's the last we hear of Hagar. And but this is my depiction of her in this car.
I'm gonna make quesadillas.
You're making quesadillas?
Yes, my son wants quesadillas again for dinner tonight.
Nice.
Yes.
So there's my interpretation of Hagar. That's who she was. I've got her. She was an Egyptian woman. She was a slave. Yes, Abram owned slaves. So did his wife Sarah. These were Egyptian slaves. It's the way things were done 4,000, 5,000 years ago. It's like dynasty, but biblical style, says Sarah Yusuf. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. I was thinking the same thing.
Pretty much it. So there's one of the stories of the cards, and I can tell you exactly what the card says. On the back side of the card, it says this. Let me call this up for you. And this is the way it was written, and I touched it up a little bit in this update, but here's what the back side of the card says. It says, Hagar, years of childlessness frustrated Sarah. Had God forgotten his promise to her husband? How could Abraham be the father of a great nation if he had no children? Sarah, impatient with waiting on God, decided that she would solve the problem herself. She commanded her Egyptian slave, Hagar, to become a surrogate and bear Abraham's children for her. But Sarah's solution bore bitter fruit. After Hagar became pregnant with Abraham's child, she grew contemptuous of Sarah and began to despise her. At least that's what Sarah believed, knowing that she bore Abraham's child in her womb. Because of this, Sarah jealously mistreated Hagar. In fear of Sarah, Hagar fled into the desert, but an angel appeared to her. Return to Abraham, the angel commanded. You will have a son. Name him Ishmael. The name means God hears. Hagar returned, but her relationship with Sarah deteriorated. 14 years later, Sarah finally bore a son to Abraham and named him Isaac. And at a celebration feast years later, Ishmael teased his half-brother. Infuriated, Sarah demanded that Abraham abandon Hagar and Ishmael. And although it greatly distressed him, Abraham did as Sarah demanded, and he left Hagar and her son alone in the desert. When they ran out of water, Hagar cried, fearing Ishmael's death, but an angel appeared miraculously providing water. God heard, and Ishmael lived to become a father of nations. That's what it says. And there's two biblical references. We always put two questions at the end. We said, who should we rely on when we become impatient? Look in your Bibles at Philippians 4:19. Then how do Hagar and Ishmael provide an example of man's failed attempts to save himself? Look in your Bible at Galatians 3:21. So that's what that is, and that's what that's all about. So there you go. Delaney, I'm going to put you on mute for background sound.
You're trying to come here and I walk down the train. No.
So when Delaney, when we're done with this little segment, Delaney can come in and we'll talk a little bit. But that's from Ishmael's heel sprang a spring of holy water, says Sarah Yusuf. Zamzam had formed. And so the sets are not available. Not yet, Sarah. They're just going to be going to press here very shortly. And there'll be collectible cards, 8 cards in a pack, foil pack. And then we'll also have complete sets that you can buy too. There's going to be, the website is up. You can go to ancientheroesofthebible.com. And keep in mind that my friend Terry, they're very conservative Christian. And so the cards are reflecting a very conservative message when it comes to the biblical tales. I like to put a little more meaty history in there and things like that. Like, here's something. We didn't put this in the trading cards, but we laughed about it 30 years ago when I talked about this. Did you know? Oops, sorry about that. I didn't mean to take you out, Delaney. Did you know when we were writing the card about King David, we did a series of 9 cards on him. And with King David, there was, remember when he came and he slew Goliath? We all know the story of David and Goliath. Okay, there you are. There's Delaney. We all know the story of David and Goliath. And it says that David came because Israel was camped on the hillside, up on the hills above the valley of Elah, which you can go visit in Israel still today. And you can see the site. And on the other hill was encamped the Philistine armies. And the camps are still there. You can still see the little stone village they built there for the army. And it said that Goliath came up, and from the middle of the field, he would call up to the armies of Israel and saying, whoever can come, and I challenge you a single combat. If you come and fight me, whoever wins the day. And if you win, the Philistines will be your servants, and if we win, you'll be ours. And of course, no man took up. And it says Goliath did this for 40 days. And yes, Sarah, Yusuf, yeah, we have Old Testament, New Testament passages throughout most of the cards. This one happened to have two different New Testament passages. So as Goliath is calling up, by the end of the 40 days where he's taunting the armies of Israel, challenging, it no longer said he was, at the beginning it says he was coming down into the valley and he would call up to the army and of Israel. And then by the end of the 40 days, it says, and as Goliath was coming up the hill and calling out to the army, David arrives in the camp bringing lunch for his brothers because he's back home tending the sheep and his older brothers are in battle. And David looks at him and he says, who's this dude? Who's this dude that's coming up and taunting the armies of Israel? And of course, it's all in this apologetic language of who is this heathen that comes up and taunts the armies of the Lord and so on and yada, yada. And so we know the story from there. David said, I'll go fight him. And keep in mind, we get in a picture this young boy going on. It wasn't a young boy. David was the youngest son, and he was the one left home tending the sheep. He was probably closer to 20 years old. He was a young man, and or a late teenager is probably the age. And so what happens? Remember in that story, the king offered him his armor, and David turned it down. He said, too big, too weighty. And it says, so David goes out with his sling, and what does he do? He picks up 5 smooth stones from the little brook in the bottom of the valley. And we all know that Goliath taunts him and laughs at him. And he says, am I a dog that you come to me with sticks and rocks? He says, come here, boy, and I'll feed your carcass to the fowl of the air. And of course, David gives his speech, which sounds a lot like an apologetic, but he could have said this if he was out there. He said, look, he says, you come to me with swords and spears and all this. He says, I come to you in the name of God. And basically, I'm going to take you down in the name of God. And he takes his sling. And he had told, by the way, when the people were questioning him, Saul, he says, I've killed lions with my sling. And that's a pretty formidable weapon, ancient weapon. So what does he do? The story, he takes one stone, whoosh, whoosh, cracks a stone off into Goliath's forehead, right between the eyes, takes him out. And it says he killed him. And then what does he do? He goes over and he takes Goliath's sword and he cuts off Goliath's head. Holds it above his head. It's the prize. And what does it say? The Israelite army is, the Philistines are routed. They go running off and the Israelite army chases them down. And it says, and David brought the head of Goliath and his sword to Jerusalem with him. Now, an interesting anecdote about that. David didn't conquer Jerusalem for another 13 years. So if he brought the head of Goliath and Goliath's sword to Jerusalem with him, he still had that head 13 years later. He still had that sword 13 years later. When he went and conquered. My guess, what's that?
That's gross.
It's gross. I'll bet you. Here's Uncle John. Bring Uncle John. And, hey, John.
The movie I saw. That's gross.
So here's my theory. Is that, remember, you're talking about a Middle Eastern monarch in the making 3,000 years ago.
Barbarism.
I'll bet you David took that head and dried that head, mounted it on a pole, and that was one of his banners, his standards. They would go into battle with these poles and the flags and the standards and all that. How about you had the heads of his enemies or the skull or something? So if David took this, after he slew Goliath, it says he took his head and his sword and took it to Jerusalem with him, but he didn't conquer Jerusalem for 13 more years. So 13 years later, he's still got this head. And then remember when he runs from Saul, he goes to the high priests at Nob and asks for the sword of Goliath, where it's been held in safekeeping. And he takes the sword of Goliath. But there's a point to all this, why I brought this all up. There was one little fact that you don't know, you don't hear. It's in the biblical story. We didn't put this in the cards. But what were some of the other rewards that King Saul offered to the man who would kill this Goliath, this giant, who, by the way, was 6 cubits in a span, which measures roughly about 9'2". And so he's a big dude. I don't think he suffered from giantitis or whatever they call it, giantess, because those guys are usually frail in body. It said he was a warrior from the days of his youth and was a warrior now when David slew him. He's just a big guy. And then it also calls him in one place, getting into a totally different topic, but it calls Goliath and his 3 brothers from Gath. We call it Gath, G-A-T-H. It's Goliath of Gath. And they've uncovered the city of Gath. There's huge excavations there. But the Bible calls Goliath and his 3 brothers children of the Nephilim. The Nephilim, the giants in the book of Genesis. Result of the interbreeding, remnants of the Nephilim. And so they were giants. Well, it says that Saul promised 3 things to the man who could take out Goliath. He would give him his daughter's hand in marriage, a princess. He would make his family tax-free in Israel. And there was one other thing. He would make him captain of his bodyguard. Now, when David killed Goliath, word got around. Remember, before this happened, Samuel, the prophet, had already anointed David to replace King Saul. He's the prophet of God. And word got around. They said, this is the kid who was anointed in your place. And so Saul's thinking, well, if I give him my daughter's hand in marriage, I'm just strengthening his claim to my throne. And so what does he tell David to do? Do you know what he did, John? Remember what he gave him an extra task before he would give him his daughter's hand in marriage. Do you remember what it was? No. Nope. He had to bring Saul, I think it was 100 Philistine foreskins.
No, it's 400.
400, was it?
400 foreskins.
David doubled it. Didn't he ask for 200 and David brought 400? That's what it was. And so you know very good and well that there weren't no Philistines giving up their foreskins for David so he could marry the king's daughter. He went out and slaughtered 400 Philistines. He brought double the amount. Could you imagine that scene? I'm pretty sure Saul was like, I've got him now. He's not going to take my throne. He's never going to get my daughter's hand in marriage. Well, David shows up with double the amount of foreskins. Could you imagine that scene? Could you imagine that scene? David walking into the palace, or it was, not a grandiose palace. It was more like a bunker that Saul would have lived in, but a fortress, but bringing in a sack of 400 Philistine foreskins, throwing them at Saul's feet, splach, this big burlap sack, whatever it was.
He said, here, rub your face in this. That's what he said.
Go. Here you go. I want, now you owe me your daughter. And so Saul had to keep his word. And so he marries Saul's daughter. And then, of course, there's all this stuff about, and we went through this when I was talking about the life of David in my series on King David. 3 years ago now I did that. You can find it on my YouTube channel. But there was this thing. Remember the biblical story? Saul kept going nuts and trying to kill David. Now, David became the captain of his bodyguard. So he was no kid. Captain of the king's bodyguard. Went out and fought battles. Remember, they're riding into town, and Saul's in his chariot, and David's in his, and all the people are chanting, Saul has killed his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. And then the biblical narrative in the book of Samuel says Saul got pretty jealous of this, and he started getting worried. The people love David more than me. Well, they show in the biblical narrative in Samuel that Saul is becoming jealous of David, and he tries to kill him, throws his spear at him, all this jealousy over David. And finally, David, whose closest friend is Jonathan, the prince, Saul's son, has a love for Jonathan, and Jonathan a love for him. And the father says he wants David dead. I want him dead. I want his family dead. I want him dead in Israel. And think Al Capone. And so what happens? Yeah. What happens? Jonathan says to David, my dad's going to kill you. And I'll let you know what's going on. If you got to run, go hide outside the walls. And if I shoot an arrow past you where your hiding place, he says, you got to run because he's coming for you. And so that's what happens. David's hiding. Jonathan shoots an arrow past David. David flees. And that's when he goes to the priests at Nob and sees Ahimelech, the high priest, and asks for the sword of Goliath. And the interesting thing, though, which is only vaguely mentioned in the account in the book of Samuel, is that David, I don't think he was being chased by Saul just because Saul was jealous of him. That's the apologetic. What does an apologetic do? And especially apologetics of that time period. They would take a ruler, they make the ruler look better than he was, and make all his enemies look worse than they were to make him look better. The book of Samuel is no different. Because there's also the book of Kings, the book of Chronicles that lists things about David that seem to be in conflict with the book of Samuel. Well, so what's going on in the court of Saul? What would happen in ancient times if, say, a guy slept with the king's wife? What would happen? Well, he'd obviously it'd be treason and to be executed, probably in a pretty gory fashion. What would you do if there was somebody who was making some rattling about he wants to take over the throne, or he's next in line, or he's a competitor, and he sleeps with the king's wife? What does that do? Does the same thing 10 times worse. You got a guy who's vying for the throne or wants the throne who's now sleeping with the king's wife. And that was a really bad thing back then because it showed that the king was impotent, is what it said. King had no strength. He couldn't even keep power over his own wife. So what do you got going on? You got David, when he's serving Saul as the captain of the bodyguard and serving in the palace, he starts sleeping with Saul's wife. It's right in the scriptural. Right in the scriptural account. He's sleeping with his wife. And when he runs off, he sends for her and he brings her with him. She leaves Saul to be with David. Remember, David goes to the cave of Adullam, where he lives for 3 years out in the wilderness. And it says he gathered all those who were dispossessed and they were outlaws and they were all this, and they all gathered themselves, and he had 300 mighty men of valor, according to the account, that gathered themselves to David, and they all lived at the cave of Adullam. And so David was kind of like this Old Testament version of Robin Hood. He's out in the greenwood. He's got all the outlaws gathered. He's attacking, but he wouldn't attack the king. He would not attack. I will not attack God's anointed king, he says. But he'll sleep with his wife and all that other stuff. So David's trying to get around things. And so what do you have happen? Saul pursues him. And there's two stories where David, according to the scripture, had an opportunity to take Saul's life. One is at the cave of Adullam. Saul camps there. He doesn't know all of David's men are hidden back in the cave. And he goes and he sleeps in there or takes a leak in there.
Now we know why all of David's kids are so fucked up.
That's it. And all of David's kids were fucked up. That's right. All his kids tried to rebel. Absalom,
Right in his sister.
I can't remember all the names of his sons. One of his sons raped his sister and half sister, different mother, things like that. And David, by the way, every one of those sons, other than Solomon, tried to lead a rebellion or a coup against his father, against David. Absalom gathered all the people. He didn't hate his father, but he thought his father had to come off the throne and he would be a better king. And the people supported him. But each one of these 5 sons all met an untimely death in the story. But you notice in the story, which is an apologetic, David is never there. He's always conveniently gone somewhere else when one of his sons dies. And this has the look. I was reading the book by I can't think of his name off Joel. It'll come to me. Who wrote the book on King David? And talking about this being apologetic, he said this is clearly an apologetic about David. It's trying to make him look better. It's making sure that he was never there when the deaths took place. He was never responsible. He was never this, never that, never so on. He even contends, and we remember the big sin of David, adultery with Bathsheba. And this is another instance of apologetic, that she was married to Uriah, the captain of David in David's army. And David has sex with her. He sees her bathing from his rooftop and calls for her while Uriah, her husband's out battling the Philistines. And so she comes in and she gets pregnant, according to the story. And the prophet Nathan comes to David and tells him that little story. You know, there's somebody in your kingdom. He says, I have an issue, king, and I need your judgment on this. There's somebody in your kingdom who is a rich man. He has anything he ever wants, and he has a guest coming, and he takes one of his servants, basically a slave, somebody that works for him, a poor man, takes his one ewe lamb, who he loved as his own child almost, and slays it for the feast. He says, what should happen to this man? And David's kind of angry by the story. He's a passionate guy. He says, well, that guy should be put to death. And then what does Nathan the prophet say? He says, thou art the man. He says, you're the man. He says, here's God's judgment. And that judgment was, he says, you are the man that took Uriah, had a wife. You could have any wife you want. You have several wives already. You took the wife of your servant, so on. And he said, so God's judgment is the child won't live past 7 days, and the child will die. And so on. And the kingdom will be rent from your hand. And so David prays for forgiveness. There's that beautiful Psalm 52, if you read it, where David says, he says, against you and you only, God, have I sinned and done this evil in your sight. He says, purge me with hyssop and I shall be clean. Wash me and I shall be whiter than snow. Though my sins be as scarlet, I shall be white as snow. And there's that little song we had even in church and in youth ministry, that when it said, white as snow, though my sins be as scarlet, Lord, I know that I'm here and forgiven, and so on. And the song goes on. So he says, wash me and I shall be whiter than snow, says David. Now, that's a beautiful psalm. David very well could have written that. There are some that believe that that was part of the apologetic of David, that the baby didn't ever exist, that Uriah was a fictitious person. Bathsheba, remember at the end of David's life, now she bore him another son. His son was Solomon. I'm sorry that not that Uriah was fictitious, but that the situation was fictitious, because there is some thinking that Bathsheba's son Solomon was actually the son of Uriah the Hittite, her husband, because of things she says at the end of David's life, where she rushes to have him appointed as the next king, have David pass it on. There's all this. It's interesting stuff. We'll go through it again sometime. But it's talking about the apologetic. And yes, and Sarah Yusuf says, we're made clean by virtue of divine mercy. Absolutely. And Sarah says, absolute power corrupts absolutely, even when touched by the divine. That's true. That's one thing you'll notice about all biblical heroes, is God also in the scripture showed their faults. They're all purely human. And David was a human guy. This man who wrote this book on David, and if I could see the book, I'd grab it and give you his name. I'm not remembering it off the top of my head for some reason. But he wrote a book called King David, the real life story, the true story of a fictitious hero. Meaning David was a real guy. He says, I'm Jewish. He says, he's head of, by the way, the guy who wrote this book is the head of, at least was at the time he wrote the book, head of Hebrew studies at Yale. And he wrote this book, and he said, I'm Jewish. I believe David was a real guy. There's no reason to doubt that. He says, what I doubt is the apologetic written about him in Scripture. And so there's reverence for David, but at the same time, he says, as he concludes his book, he says, David, it turns out by the look of things and what we've researched about him, would not be a guy any of us would like very well. He probably wasn't a nice guy. Why did God say, and maybe one truism in the book of Samuel, in the apologetic, was that God wouldn't allow David to build the temple. He said, your son Solomon will do that. And David pled with God, I want to build the temple. And he was told by the prophet, no, you are a man of blood. You're a warrior. You're establishing the kingdom. It's your son in a time of peace is going to build the temple. And so, yes, Sarah says, divine word is subjected and filtered through human interpretation. That's very true. So I don't know what to believe about that. I want to believe David to be a great hero, and I think he was either way. But I also think he was a bloody man. He was a man who did everything he could to establish his own throne, his own kingdom, to unify Judah and Israel under one king. He built the city of Jerusalem while he sacked the city of Salem, turned it into Jerusalem. You can still visit it today. You go to the old city in Jerusalem, it's the city of David. Mount Ophel, it's called. It's down in the lower portion of the city. The eastern gate faces the Mount of Olives, and so it's on the north side of the city. You've got the lower city. That's the city of David. And that's what he sacked. And then the temple was built up above that in what is now where the Mosque of Omar sits now, was the temple compound. And that's where the Wailing Wall is, down on the other side and all of that. So David was not allowed to build the temple as much as he wanted to, and Solomon did that. So was Solomon the son of David? We don't know for sure. There is doubt there because of the apologetic and many other facts. Hey, Delaney, you going?
Yeah.
Nice talking
I want
to you.
to. I need to want everybody to know that I got me a crib. I'm putting out a car on the 1st. The 8th, I'm moving to my apartment, so I'm gonna be just fine.
Absolutely fantastic. Glad to hear it.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Delaney, love you. I don't see enough of you. We'll have to do this again when you can come on and just talk for a while.
All right, then. When I get my apartment, you can interview me.
Sounds good.
Bye, y'all.
Right on. We'll talk to you later. All right. So anyway, Sarah says, through David's faults and flaws, he's relatable as a human being. That's very true. And so, was he responsible for the deaths of his sons who were trying to overthrow him? I know they said when Bathsheba came to him to have Solomon named the heir because David had said he was old and he was feeble. I don't think he was elderly by any means. I think he was, by the chronology, probably in his 70s. But he might have been like a Joe Biden in his 70s, maybe, or what we're getting, because it said he couldn't keep heat. It said he was feeble. His wife came. They had to help him sit up. He was sick. He was either sick, starting to go slipping mentally, all of this. And she had conversations with him that nobody would know because they were private, which also lent to, the looking at this as possibly being an apologetic. There was the, on that issue of different stories, remember we read in Samuel how David slew Goliath. It gave a description of Goliath. And it gave a description of his armor and his spear and the weight of it, like a weaver's rod, and so on. But then over in the book of Kings, it's either Kings or Chronicles, you read a little account. This is now outside the apologetic of Samuel. You read the account of David and the deeds of his mighty men of valor. And it's almost like a bullet-pointed list, just little phrases. It says, and so-and-so did so-and-so, and so-and-so did so-and-so, and so-and-so did so-and-so. Well, you've got a guy named, not Abishag. There was a woman when David was old. It says they got him a young woman named Abishag to lie with him in bed to keep him warm at night because he couldn't get any warmth in his body. What's his name? It'll come to me. There was a name of one of his warriors is listed, and it says, and these were the deeds of so-and-so, these were the deeds of so-and-so, and this is the deeds of so-and-so who slew Goliath, the giant, whose spear shaft was like a weaver's shaft. And then it goes on to the next guy. And you go, well, wait a minute. Who slew Goliath? Well, this other guy. And I can't think of his name off the top of my head. It's in the account. And but this is where you had two different accounts. You say, which one is true? Did David do it? Or did this guy that fought for him do it? We don't know. It's so brief. And so you have those kinds of little contradictions in Scripture. And so it's very interesting. And by the way, in the King James Bible, it says, and it's in italics, it says that this guy slew the brother of Goliath, whose spear shaft was like a so-and-so. But the words brother of don't appear in the manuscript. In the oldest manuscripts we have, it doesn't appear in the Hebrew. It was added in for clarity, but they're clarifying something that's not in the text. So it's erroneous. So it didn't say the brother of. It said
Sounds
Goliath.
a little like Washington.
It certainly does. And I think political intrigue, David was the same way. His reign was the same way. But, and we got off on this talking about these ancient heroes cards. And I only I bring this up because I actually have a David card, and I've got a card with David and the sword of Goliath here. Let me show this to you. And let's see, there's Jonathan, Goliath. I've got Goliath. I show how Goliath probably would have looked And David and the sword. Let me call that one up too. So I got to open these up and convert them, and I'll show you how I depicted these characters. I'm going to save. I just have to convert them over to a different kind of file so you can see these. This is my view of David, and I drew this picture 30 years ago. All I did was touch it up, and I had to change the sword. I had the wrong kind of sword depicted, and so I went in digitally and replaced the sword with the sword of Goliath. And you'll see on the Goliath card as well that I had to change the image of the sword. And so I had to go in and digitally recreate the sword to a more accurate Philistine sword. But here, let me call these images up, and I'll show you what they look like. This is the first one I'm going to load up here is Goliath. Now, Goliath was a Philistine. I had mentioned that the Bible talks about him being 6 cubits in a span. And let's see, where did it go? I'm saving them here. And it's not showing it to me. Hold on, I'll get there. Ancient heroes, Hagar. Well, it must have saved somewhere else. Hold on. Let me see where they went. File. Save as. I'm going to redo this PNG. Oh, I see what I did. PDF. We'll save it to the file folder. Boom. This is Goliath. I might have done the same thing with David. I might have missaved it. Save as. Yeah, I put PNG instead of a PDF. Technical, but there it is. Let's save David. Now we can go back and load these in, and I'll show you how I depicted these characters. Now, the Bible does give one physical description of David. It said he was strong and ruddy complected, and that he had beautiful eyes, it says in the scripture. He was a young man who had beautiful eyes. And I think that that's interesting, that physical description of David. And let me find and now present slides, computer, upload. Let's upload Goliath now. Now I've got him in here. Supposedly. It's not showing up for some reason. It's right here on my computer, guys. Hang on. These are the kind of errors you hate having while you're doing a live show, and you're doing it while you're live. I'm going to try this one more time. I'm going to save as. Same card, PDF, in the file. For some reason, I'm just going to put it on my desktop so I can find it easier. Save. Save it. And then Goliath. I'll save this again. I'll put it on my desktop so I can find it easier. I know, scintillating live radio here, but let's put that on the desktop as well. Save and save the PDF. Okay. We'll try one more time. Let's go over onto the desktop and we'll find Goliath. Where is he? There they are. Goliath. Okay, let's bring up Goliath. That's uploading right now. And then I will also go load up David while we're waiting for that. Upload file. And here's David and the sword of Goliath. All right. So while that's uploading, here is my depiction of Goliath. There you go. That's the only two I'm going to put up for tonight. Let's see. Oh, what does Sarah say here? Adding a bit of midrash flair. Yeah, exactly. And save some for next time. Definitely. It's almost 11 o'clock. So here's my depiction of Goliath. And the man next to him was his shield bearer, remember. And so I've got Goliath depicted here as about a 9'2" man. And the sword of Goliath. So that would have been the relative height to about a 5'10" man standing next to him, which would have been tall in that day. So there's Goliath. And then now here is David. Here's how I depicted David. And there he's got the sword of Goliath. Yeah, he was a wide guy, Sarah.
Kind of
I
an
keep-
Egyptian sort of sword.
It is. It's a kepish, and which were widely used in the Middle East in that era. And so I gave him that sword as a Philistine sword. And this is how I pictured David. I picture him this way as he would have looked, I think, in the wilderness, wearing the drab and so on. But this is how I saw King David. And I would put him in different kinds of robes as the king later on. But there's my depictions of David and Goliath. David looks a lot like Goliath. Let's put Goliath back up in here. Boom. Little different on the face, but different facial structure, but both have beards. Yeah. I've got David with long, wavy hair. There you go. So there you go. That's the Ancient Heroes cards. That's some of the stories behind. You would have seen him as younger. I see. I've got David depicted here later in the later. I saw David would have been probably in his late teens with the encounter with Goliath. And then remember, 13 years later, he would have been in his early to mid 30s, or probably early 30s, when he conquered and sacked Salem and set up Jerusalem there and renamed it Jerusalem. And then he reigned there for like 40 years, something like that. 28 to 40 years, somewhere in that range. I don't remember. So I've got him here probably, looking very 35 to 40-ish in this picture. So, and Goliath may be younger, maybe. I don't know. I'd like to go visit Gat, the town where Goliath lived. Just a few miles, really, from the Valley of Elah, where the battle took place. So, interesting stuff. So, I'm going to pull that down. John, since you're here and I've been doing most of the talking, how you doing tonight?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Right on. What's new?
Been very busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got things coming along, and we've been
good.
sorting through Dave's room.
Oh, yes. That's where you're sitting now. So, yeah, a lot of stuff. So we'll have to talk this week about other locations for some of his stuff where he's got things stored and all of that.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that off air.
When you were talking on the first part of the program and reading from the book about becoming an archaeologist,
yeah,
it made me think of how closely archaeology and anthropology live.
Yes.
And oftentimes when we're reading books, it's like an anthropological journey.
Yes.
I read the entire series of Tom Swift, the original.
Yeah.
Most of the Tom Swift Juniors. But when you read those books, and they were aimed at like 12-year-old boys at the time, you're part of you is horrified at the stereotyping of people.
Oh, yeah.
But on the other hand, some of the people who were stereotyped were the people that Tom was closest to.
Yes.
And his best friends. And even though, was it Jim?
I'm not sure. I don't remember.
I can't think of his
so
name.
So long since I've actually read them.
Was illiterate.
Oh,
but
yeah.
He was highly intelligent and an excellent self-taught engineer.
Yes.
He could take scrap stuff and build machines. So
I'm looking around because I've got on one of my shelves, I've got Tom Swift and his rocket. I think that's the title of it. It's
Tom Swift and the electric rifle inspired the taser.
Oh, nice.
The guys that invented it said they got the idea from reading Tom Swift.
Oh, that's interesting.
My parents.
Sarah wants to know how your parents are doing.
My parents are having good days and bad.
Yeah.
they're in the 90s, so there's some occasional periods of disassociation.
Sure.
But they're doing as well as can be expected.
Sure.
Quite a shock. It's often said parents shouldn't have to bury their children.
Yeah. And they're
Although
burying
for much
2.
of humanity, that was something that was part of life.
Yeah. Yeah. That's more common than we like to care to admit. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, if you missed the announcements I put up on my social media and on the radio show, the memorial service and the celebration of life, 2 different events, are both happening the same day. It'll be Saturday, August 12th. That's 3 weeks from now, 2 weeks from now. How far out is that? We're almost at the end
at
of
the Presbyterian Church in Rochester at 1 p.m.
Yes. So we are 1 week. It's 3 weeks away.
Yeah.
And the memorial service will be down in Rochester, Minnesota, which is about roughly an hour and a half from the Twin Cities, from St. Paul. And right up the same highway, if you're local, Highway 52, right out of Rochester, comes right into St. Paul. And a turnoff on Highway 52 is just as you hit the outskirts of downtown St. Paul, you're where the lodge is, where they're going to do the celebration of life. So the funeral is at 1 o'clock, or the memorial is at 1 o'clock at the church. Very small, rather limited. It lasts a little over an hour. And
will be live streamed.
It'll be live streamed. And then a few hours later at 6 o'clock starts the celebration of life. The doors open, I think, at 4 or 4:30. And that'll be a much bigger event because it's going to be here in the cities. It's going to be all the different communities that knew Dave. Theater, Sword, the different groups he belonged to, the Masons, the festival, everybody that knew him is going to be there. So that'll be a big event where the church will be a little smaller and more intimate. This will be the big celebration of life for everybody to get together later that day. So if you have any plans on coming out here, you can connect with me personally, and I'll give you information. And so Saturday, August 12th. And there it is. So that's coming up. All right. And John, got anything else you want to share with us before we get ready to sign off here?
Not really. I just
Right.
wanted to hang out for a while.
I'm glad you did. And I sat and talked through the whole time. I was telling a story. So,
oh, no, that was okay.
But Sunday morning, maybe we can get John back here on Sunday morning, and we'll be doing a show right here. That's the next show, live Sunday morning at 9 a.m. And and we'll see you all then. It's 9 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. out east, 7 a.m. left coast time. So, and in Australia, I think it'll be 5 in the afternoon or something. I don't know what it is.
Maybe some interesting people will show up.
Yes, maybe some interesting people will. And I think Ruben Fast Horse might be here again. And we'll hopefully get Sarah in and Uncle John in. And
I always said there was just one reason I wanted to do something that caused Johnny Carson to fly me out to California and be on his show. And they said, "What's that?" I said, "I wanted to say, gee, I've been watching your show since you were in New York and had interesting guests."
Oh, nice. And then you went to California. Exactly. I remember Johnny. I was just after the Jack Parr days. So,
yeah.
But anyway. All right, folks. And John, we're going to wrap it for tonight. I hope to see you here Sunday morning, John.
I hope to be there.
Bright and early, and we'll have some good conversation on Sunday. Rainey goes to camp with Rowan, the 11-year-old daughter, And they head to camp for a week, scout camp, and Flynn goes to scout camp, his own scout camp. So it's going to be Ellery and me Sunday through Saturday. So if anybody wants to come over and partay and bring hot dish or something, you're welcome. So that'll be all next week. So yeah, Michelle Cannon-Free, she says Dave Potter. And so there we go. Folks, going to get out of here. Thanks for being here. John, I'm going to let you go. Thank you for coming
Good night.
in, brother. Sure appreciate you being here. I love you.
Love you too.
Talk to you soon. And everybody else, thanks for being here. Thanks for giving me your time. Thanks for showing up, still being friends. I appreciate it. I appreciate all of you. And I appreciate the fact that you'd be here tonight. So live long and prosper.